So sorry for technical interruption. Larisa John, you were just telling about how you thought of modeling the educational system, and especially what you have learned from Teach For America in Armenia. If you can just quickly repeat that part, and then we can pass to our next part.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just to recap, I was the Teacher for America from 2010 to 2012. And it was towards the end of my second year of being a teacher through this program that I thought of, why are we not creating something similar in Armenia? There's a lot of kids that are growing up in socioeconomic disadvantage. It's obviously affecting their educational outcomes. And while the solutions are complex and long-term, I always thought that the first step should begin with a movement of people who have an idea or a common vision for what great education should look like for all kids, and that equity is really at the center of this idea and of this vision. And so, in late 2012, I moved to Armenia, and it was kind of like, I guess people ask, was it a permanent move? Was it, I've been in Armenia since 2012. And I had always wanted to live in Armenia. I had never actually lived in Armenia before. I only spent my summers there. And it was just such an amazing opportunity for me to kind of combine wanting to be in Armenia and also wanting to build something that I thought was really vital and necessary for Armenia. So in 2013, I founded Teach For Armenia, very much kind of founded on the same concept of Teach For America and now Teach For All, which is a massive global network of partner organizations that are all, in different countries that are all kind of doing the same thing and leveraging the same approach of reforming the educational system and bringing about equity and access through by recruiting, training, and placing committed, passionate, resilient leaders to teach for 2 years in their country's most underserved public schools. And so in our case, we started in 2015. That was when we placed our first cohort. We had a small cohort of 14 teachers. They were selected from about 200 applications. And the road to launching Teach For Armenia was really difficult, but I think the thing that I was worried about the most was, are there actually young people in Armenia who want to leave, their jobs, their plans, quote unquote, and dedicate 2 years of their lives to working in really remote areas of Armenia, mostly in villages on the border, and serve children who have been, really left outside of the learning process because of their geographic location, because of their financial circumstances, and et cetera. And I was so happy to find out that yes, indeed, there were these 14 people who joined, and our numbers grew exponentially from there. Every year we doubled our cohort, and now we're in over 100 public schools. They're all mostly in rural kind of villages, hard to get to places. We only place in schools that have real teacher shortages. Principals have a really, really difficult time hiring teachers because a lot of people don't want to live in these areas. Our teachers teach core subjects, so math, sciences, history, geography, Armenian, foreign languages, etc. And they're there for 2 years. The hope is always that they move, and what we've seen happen, to the greatest degree is we see people who move to the villages, live in the village, live the life that they're, live the life that their kids live. So if the child struggles with having running water in the house, then our teachers struggle with that too. So, it's a very humbling, it's a very physically and emotionally challenging experience, but one that I know it's an experience that really shapes you. And my experience with Teach for America shaped me. It shaped who I am, and it shaped what I'm doing in my life. I was originally going to go into the business sector. I have a degree in international business from the US. I was, planning on going into some big company. I was really interested in fashion merchandising. So my life would have looked very differently. And again, I don't know if it would have been a bad alternative, but I do think that because I did Teach for America right out of university, I kind of figured out what was actually really important to me early in my life, as opposed to later. And what I'm seeing happening now within my friend group, who are now in their 30s, is that a lot of people are beginning to go through some sort of professional existential crisis. And I don't think that, I don't want to speak too soon, but I don't think that that's going to happen for me, because I've just felt very fulfilled this entire time. It's been a very challenging 7 years in Armenia of building Teach for Armenia from ground up. Very challenging. Like we can talk about that later. If people have questions, I'm happy to answer. But it's been the most rewarding and the most fulfilling experience. And I just wouldn't want to have spent these last 7 years in any other way, or doing anything else, or anywhere else but Armenia.
Since we are in frames of Repat Talk, I think I would be the one asking the question: how would you describe the period of repatriation? How you started here? Imagining that I have never heard that story, so so that people will also learn, because I'm sure there was a huge difference in the life you lived in the US and the life you started to live here, especially not just moving here, but also starting a startup, starting a new type of an organization. So if you can briefly tell about that, and then we can move to our current state of relations.
Sure. Well, as I said, I moved, it was late 2012. And when I moved, there was a growing number of repats. But I think Repat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Repat started around the same time Teach for Armenia was founded, in 2013, 2014. So there was movement in the repat circles. I mean, I think that, there were more and more kind of young people coming and choosing to live in Armenia around that time. But at the same time, like when I think about what existed in terms of support for repats, trying to launch something new or start a business, or, whether it was nonprofit or for-profit, or just like adapting and fitting in, there was just a lot less, there, I guess. So, and when I think about then and now, like there's just so much more. I don't want to call it infrastructure, but there are just so many, there are so many more platforms for people to take advantage of, including Repat. Like Repat has done incredible work to support repatriation and create a community, and I think the community piece is probably one of the most important ones, is feeling that you have a group of people that have gone through a similar experience and you can really connect with for different questions and, ideas, and just for emotional, moral support. That wasn't, when I first moved, that wasn't really the case. And it's just been incredible to see the different, the progress that's been made. There's a lot of like fellowships now. There's seed funding for people trying to launch new things within the Repat group. So there's just a lot more kind of like support, and I guess mentally people are now more open to ideas being started and etc. When I moved, it was, like who is this person? Who does she think she is for wanting to start something new in a country where that's pretty much impossible to do? There was just a lot of negativity and a lot of, there's just a lack of confidence that something like this would be possible. And it wasn't just, I kind of got a lot of it from even like my closest, circle. Like there was just not enough examples in Armenia of people moving, having an idea, realizing it, and scaling it. Like there just wasn't that. So I think people were just speaking from a place of familiarity where, like great idea, you're not going to make it happen. And so I think now it's just a really different place, and it's still a hard process, but I think just having a mental awareness within Armenia that things are possible to create from ground up is already a really big step forward for any entrepreneur doing any kind of work. And so, so I think that was pretty tough, like adjusting to that. I mean, I'm pretty resilient in that way. I grew up in Moscow in the 90s as an Armenian. And, so there, I felt like my skin was pretty thick, but it was still, I was still tested to my limits and still am to some, in some ways, 7 years in. So it, I think it helped that I had spent all of my summers in Yerevan growing up. So I was familiar with the language. My mom is from Yerevan. My grandma lived there. So when we lived in Moscow, we would go visit my grandma all the time, every summer. My dad is American. He's Irish descent. So I kind of like grew up in this like multicultural family with a very American dad and a very Armenian kind of mom, and saw kind of the best of both worlds, I guess. But I always felt very Armenian. Yerevan and Armenia always felt really familiar to me. And so I think like having a really good sense of how people think and how people react to things like that was really helpful to me as I started building Teach for Armenia, because I had to work with really different people, from government officials to school leaders to potential recruits, potential donors, very different groups of people. But I think both my US and my Russia/Armenia upbringing was helpful in that. So again, it was an adjustment and it was a process, but I felt like I had the tools necessary to kind of be able to be, hopefully, to be successful. But my biggest problem was always my language. I didn't grow up speaking Armenian. I grew up speaking Russian and English. And the language thing was kind of a personal complex for me for a while, and still is. But at some point, like I really worked, I got a teacher, I, brushed up on reading and writing. I'm still nowhere near where I want to be, but at some point I just decided that I'm not going to, have that complex anymore. So I'm much more relaxed now when I speak Armenian, but I would say that that's probably been one of my hardest challenges to overcome.
You certainly speak perfect Armenian, and I was just recalling the moment when you mentioned how tough it was at the beginning with the idea of Teach for Armenia, and then people were saying, "Oh, it's a great idea, but probably that's it." Because even nowadays, when at first people think about hear about Teach for Armenia, they say, "Oh, that's a really great idea, but who would go?" And then when you tell that there is a 5-6 years of experience, they're, "Oh, wow!" Then it's probably it's not just romantic idea; it's something that's working, and especially now with so many people working on different layers in relation to Teach for Armenia. I think that's really great path that together with the team you have passed in the
Thank
past
you.
5-6 years.
Thanks to you and all the people you recruit.
Thanks to everyone who is hearing us from our team. So I think we can smoothly go to our nowadays period. Again, challenging period, and not just for individuals, but to everyone, no matter where we are, no matter what we do. And this is related, of course, with the coronavirus, with the quarantine, with the lockdown that almost every country is experiencing. And you certainly know that it's a tough challenge for companies too, to do this transition, to start working remotely, and not saying the field we are, the remote education, which has been talked a lot, not only recently, but for years and years. But we feel that this is really something new, the new scale, the new level of being remote, being digital. So I would love to invite your talk here on this, how TFA is addressing, because we were quite quick with transition and we have some great plans. So maybe you can tell about that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, everyone is kind of trying to figure this out as we go. I think some countries are better prepared than others, but yeah, I mean, as you all know, in Armenia, schools have been shut down since early March. And we have seen and appreciated this effort to respond to the situation by shifting a lot of the classes online. Zoom seems to have become everyone's go-to platform. And I definitely think that this is super necessary to do, because otherwise the amount of learning lost is pretty tremendous and will set a lot of children back. I think what's important to understand is the mode that we're kind of responding to this in currently is more, a crisis management response. And actually there's a term for it. It's called emergency response teaching. And I think that that's what we're really leveraging, and it's understandable why we're doing that, because we're in an emergency. I think what will be important to do as we go forward as a country is really figure out, well, how do we move from emergency response teaching to actually creating a robust online learning program? And that requires content. It also requires development of skills that neither our students nor most of our teachers have currently. And it's understandable because a lot of what we've been doing up until now is just analog. It's not digital. And I think the third thing also is infrastructure. Do our students, or do we as a country actually have the resources and the capacity to ensure equity in device and internet connectivity access? We had I said a few things on this online a few weeks ago, more than a month ago by now. And I about this concept of many of our students within Teach For Armenia, which is 15,000 kids. We're working with 15,000 kids. A lot of our kids don't have access to the internet. They don't have the right device. And over and over again, I read this comment of, what is this woman talking about? Everyone has a cell phone. What is this woman talking about? Everyone has at least an iPad or some sort of tablet. And, you know, first of all, that isn't entirely true. There actually, surprisingly, to some people, I don't know why, but there are a lot of kids across Armenia and Artsakh who don't have any sort of device. The second thing also is, even if they do have some sort of device to leverage for accessibility right now, is it the right device? Does the device have the functionality that robust online learning program would require? If you're trying to build up skill set within your students and your teachers, you know, you probably need to be doing that with kind of one device in mind, from basic, you know, here's how you turn on the device and here's how you leverage it, to, you know, here are the programs that you can be using in this device to access all of the different components of the online learning program. So I think consistency and continuity and equity, meaning ensuring that everyone has access to the right device, not just a device, but the right device, is also really important. And that obviously takes time. And so it's like we're kind of like stuck in this moment of how do we respond to the situation currently, and then simultaneously, how do we begin developing longer term solutions for this situation? And the reason why I'm talking about longer term solutions is because, you know, not in my opinion, but in the opinion of like the brightest minds of the world, both on the science side and on the education side, this pandemic and this virus, they're not, it's not just going to likely go away, you know, and never come back again. I think as educators, what we should be doing is really gearing up for a very different 2020 academic year, where likely kids will go back to school, and then kids will need to be pulled out of school again, depending on how the virus evolves. And so I think we're looking at, you know, potentially a year to 18 months, maybe more, of like this on and off, as my friend, who's the chief scientist at the USDA in the White House, says, intermittent social distancing. So I think that's just going to be the new reality. And I think this new reality is going to force us to think really in an innovative way, in a creative way, about how do we long-term support our kids. And because if we keep shutting down schools and many kids are completely offline or inaccessible, I think that's going to have like really tremendous and pretty devastating consequences on our country, you know, years from now. So that's kind of like my big thinking. And in terms of what Teach for Armenia is doing, you know, I mean, ultimately we are a nonprofit with a, you know, relatively small team, trying to do as much as we possibly can with the resources that we have, which are hard to come by and are becoming harder to come by as the economy crashes and less people are, you know, more people are becoming careful with how they're spending their money. So I think a lot of nonprofits and charities around the world are seeing declines in donations, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, you know, something that we need to think about also in terms of how we plan and where we invest our resources into. So in terms of what we're doing, we're you know, for example, with recruitment, Gor, and you can talk more about this, but we've shifted all of our recruitment, all of our selection for this incoming 6th cohort to an online space. We usually have a pre-training course, which is 5 weeks, and it's an in-person training course in one location for all of our new recruits. before we send them out to teach for 2 years. That is now happening all online, it's completely new to us. And so we're trying to fly our plane and build it at the same time. And again, we're making mistakes, and it's probably not going to, it's not going to be the most perfect product, but we're definitely doing our best. And I think what from what I'm seeing our team create, it's a really strong approach, and I think one that we can build on later on. And then I think, and then long term, our team is actually beginning to develop an online learning program that leverages our national curriculum and includes skill development for students and teachers and school leaders. That we, are excited to feed back to the Ministry of Education. All of us are working together, and so I hope that can continue. And really, this is a moment when we all need to unite.
Thank you, Larisa. Yeah, the start was challenging, but it is a good opportunity to upgrade our approach, not just as an organization only, but also to together with the ministry and other stakeholders to lead this new approach or upgraded approach to our schools. I would say, yeah, as you mentioned, in the last weeks, our whole team was working to transform all our operations to the online side. And of course, it was first of all related to our program and to the preparation of our program for the 6th generation of our teacher leaders. They touched like every aspect of our organization. So first of all, with regard to recruitment and selection, we switched from the regular meetings, info sessions, university visits to more Zoom calls, personalized activities, and then the testing and the assessment centers has been migrated to the more digital side with the use of Zoom or also some other tools. So basically, as it is popular now in our web, saying we are providing the whole flow without any physical touches. And I really hope that this situation will be over soon, or at least the new normal will come soon. But in any case, it's great that we were able to transform the program, and not only recruitment and selection, but also the pre-service, the summer academy, in a way that we can assure that the program is still there. The 6th generation will certainly be part of it, and they will enter the schools no matter which scenario goes. Of course, we hope for the best, but we are ready also for other scenarios.
And just to add to that, even if schools continue to be shut down or there's intermittent, social distancing enforced in this coming year, more and more, we've always known that this is really important, because this is really what we believe in at Teach For Armenia, is that we need really great, passionate, committed, resilient leaders of different backgrounds, not necessarily, education background, but mathematicians, STEM people, right? Like science, IT, languages, etc., going into this work to serve. I think this just becomes even more important. Like, we need these people, and we need more and more of them, because, the stakes are now even higher than they were before against our kids. And so we need innovators, we need creators in our program. We need people who are going to come up with new solutions, and help Teach For Armenia and the country through their service to overcome this situation. So our call is for, if you're considering or it's crossed your mind that Teach For Armenia is something that you're interested in doing, and are not sure how it would technically work out if schools continue to be shut down, our answer to you is, the technicality will be figured out. The need for you to be part of this program is more than ever. And so if you are that initiative taking, solutions driven innovator, we want you on board, and because our kids need you right now more than ever before.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's a great period to rethink the priorities, to rethink how we see our careers, to rethink how we want to, where we want to be in the coming years, and most probably contributing our knowledge and experience in a rural area, which is where it all is very needed. I think that can be a good time for career change, a good time for the shift. And I would say I already see it in our recruitment. I have observed several times that people who were previously were not so sure whether they want to apply or not. Currently, they are applying. They are interested.
Good.
And also the new tendencies, of course, they're like, can we be part of the program remotely via online tools, etc. In case everything else is online, of course, yes, but otherwise your physical presence, of course, would be much more needed and much more effective. We have a question, Larisa, and I'm pretty sure this question is to you. So what would be the 5 tips that you can provide to those people who are planning to start a startup in educational sector?
The 5 what?
5 tips to start a startup in education.
5 tips. Well, first, I don't know if you've seen, but Teach For Armenia actually has recently launched Armenia's first incubator for educational projects, and it's called GITES. You can go on our website, www.teachforamenia.org/incubator. To learn more about this programs. If you have an idea that is within the education sector, we'd be really happy to receive your application. We're gearing a lot of these proposals to actually propose solutions and drive change within the communities that Teach For Armenia is already partnered with, which is over 100 plus communities across 7 regions and in Artsakh. So again, check it out if that's important. If that's interesting to you, please let us know. 5 tips. Well, I think the first thing that's really important to do is to really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. I think getting super, super clear on your theory around the problem or the challenge that you're trying to solve is ultimately the foundation upon which you will build your business plan. And to that, I would say it's really important, and it is worth the time to talk to the stakeholders, to talk to people, about this problem or about this challenge that you would like to overcome, and to almost like build a network of understanding. I think clarity comes from doing this in partnership with the community or with the group of people that you're trying to solve this problem for. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing that's really important to understand is like your theory around change. So if that's the problem or challenge you see, what is your personal kind of vision for a solution? And again, I think when problems are super complex, your solution should be positioned as one of that contributes to the overarching problem that you're trying to solve. So I think that's really important. I think any startup, and again, some of this might be super basic, what I'm saying, but again, like I I can't stress how important it is to have clarity on this, not just sitting down by yourself and writing it on paper, but actually like talking to the right people and having clarity on it. The other thing I think that's really important also is having a really clearly articulated mission and vision statement. The mission is really how your nonprofit or your education startup will contribute to solving the problem that you see. And then the vision is really like, what do you want to long-term be true for the field that you're, operating in, or the area that you're trying to bring change about in. So I think like getting really clear again on like your vision, your mission, your theory of problem and theory of change, and then building an operational or business plan from that is really important. If you do it the other way around, usually you begin to have like existential questions later on, which are almost harder to solve. So create that vision statement and then backwards plan to like the technical steps that you need to take. I think the other thing I would say is, and I kind of learned this, not the hard way or through trial and error, but having the right team members is really, really, really important. Finding people that, align with, your vision for, from work ethic to, to actually aligning and believing deeply in the thing that you're trying to create. I think that that's really important. I think ultimately, as like the founder of any sort of startup, you try to do it all, but then as you grow, you begin to realize that it's not the best thing for you to be doing all of it. And there are actually people who are smarter than you, who have more technical knowledge around some of the areas. And so hiring people who are really great at what they do and are, yes, smarter than you in these areas, I think is always a really good way to go. So I don't know if that's 5 tips, but I think those are like my biggest learnings. And I guess the last thing I'll say is you as the founder need to really be obsessed with this idea. Like, if you want something to be successful, it's not just about like giving it 100%. It's really about like, for a while, you're the only person who believes that this has to exist and that it can exist. And so I think just being really resilient and really deeply believe in what you're doing, I think is really important. And even the skeptics ultimately begin to believe, maybe it's not in your idea at that point, but in you. And they invest in you, and they invest in your energy and your passion and your belief. And so I think that that's really important too. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Larisa John. I would encourage our listeners to comment their questions if they have so. And if you allow, I would add here that, especially with regard to the team and with regard to the problem solution-oriented approach when starting a startup, I think, again, the program that we have is a bright example where someone can start, in a sense that our and current teacher leaders already demonstrated that they are starting startups in the areas that they never thought about, starting library networks, starting honey products, or maybe play-related businesses. So I think this is not just the program itself as a contribution to the community, as an area to contribute your skills to the education. It's also a great opportunity to learn a lot, to learn skills necessary for project development, for starting new ideas, solving problems, and of course finding the right people, finding the right people who will be ready to support your ideas, and both with regard to the new ideas, with regard to more visible problems, with regard to network. I think people can certainly consider starting our leadership development program, and eventually also consider guides as an incubator for their ideas. Because we also have the Community Impact Fund, which is ready to support those ideas during the program. And we already have like more than 50 community development projects who are operating there, and so very successful ones. So I think this can be a good start, of course.
Yeah, and you know, because we're in the repat space, I think what I'll add here is that we've had a number of diasporan participants. We're looking to expand our numbers there, and as a repat, you know, kind of going back to the thing that I said earlier. When people ask me, like when I was just moving to Armenia, people were asking me, are you there forever? Like, is this it? And it was always like this weird, like, well, I'm going to be there. Like, I'm going to be there and I'm going to do my best there. Right. And it's been 7 years. And so far, like, I don't really see myself leaving. So I think there's potentially guilt associated, or, you know, like, if you move, you have to move permanently, or if you leave, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person left, you know. So there's a little bit of, I've always felt like, again, my personal opinion, and a lot of you might not agree with me, which is okay. You know, there's a little bit of a judgment thing happening on that side too. I think that, especially when you're young, making permanent life decisions is really overwhelming. And so this is why I always say that Teach for Armenia is like a 2-year opportunity for you to really understand not only who you are and what's important to you, and to feel like you've made an investment, a true investment in Armenia's future, but to also selfishly or not selfishly, I don't know, but I think importantly, take time for yourself while you're doing a good thing, to think about, you know, whether or not you want to be in Armenia for the long haul. And so I think programs like Teach for Armenia, and before that, like something like Birthright Armenia, like that's the first step, right? That's like you getting to Armenia and like actually seeing it for the first time, one of the first times. I think Teach for Armenia is like the next step. It's like a 2-year commitment, you know, and so, and then afterwards, I think it's really then up to the person to decide. So I just encourage our potential repats to, you know, to really consider Teach for Armenia as a stepping stone, as an opportunity to experience Armenia in a really real way, to contribute in a really powerful and meaningful way, and to not feel the pressures of forever or 10 years or 5 years or whatever it might be.
Thank you, Larisa John. We have a couple more questions. So this would be a question with sub-questions from Gregory. So first of all, well done to Teach for Armenia. Secondly, what is the most important priority for you? Obtaining adequate staff numbers, having staff with a more developed teaching pedagogy, obtaining funds to entice the first two.
Okay, so I think there's there's a few questions here. Okay. So we
have,
just copied the question. Yeah. So we have staff These are team members who work both on developing programs and on the operational side of Teach For Armenia. And then we have program participants. And these are people who apply to our 2-year leadership development program, and they go through the different stages. And if they get selected, then we put them through an intensive pre-training course, and then we kind of send them out into communities, into schools, to live and to work as regular public school teachers for 2 years. As a nonprofit, we have a fundraising goal that we need to meet every year, which is very challenging because our funding goal is directly correlated to the growth in our recruitment numbers, meaning in how many program participants we're able to bring in. And the reason why it's so correlated to that is because we pay financial assistance to all of our program participants, in addition to them receiving a school salary. So that, I guess, there's no way for us to achieve economies of scale. So, every year as we grow in cohort size and how many people are actually part of our program every year, that's how our budget increases. So with that being said, in terms of teaching pedagogy, to us, when we look at potential program participants, we don't necessarily look for people to have a degree in education. We actually look for people who, they have to have a degree they have to have a bachelor's degree, but they don't necessarily have to have a degree in pedagogy or in teaching. And so to that extent, we have, Gor, correct me if I'm wrong, we have about 50 to 60% of incoming participants who don't have a degree in education, and then some who have the qualification, either because they graduated the pedagogical university or because they graduated a university or have a degree that actually simultaneously provides a teacher qualification. So like YSU, for example, has faculties like that or departments like that. And then, and what we really look for, we have a big competency rubric that we look for, or we assess for during recruitment. But the people that end up getting selected are people that we know have the knack to be great teachers. And so, yeah, so that's kind of how we do it. And if I understand your third question in terms of obtaining funds to entice 1 and 2, meaning staff and then program participants, I would say that our stance has always been for program participants, we need to ensure that we can, between the salary that they receive from the school and the financial assistance, that we're meeting cost of life within, the village, within the region. We partnered with a great company called Briavis a few years ago who did a financial cost of life assessment for Teach For Armenia. And so we have a pretty good understanding of, how much people need to meet cost of life. Again, it's nothing extravagant, but it's enough for people to be able to not to worry, to make sure that they have what they need for life and in the community, and that's how we calculate our financial assistance every year. In terms of staff, I think ensuring that your staff are they have a good salary, they feel they have good benefits, and not just financial, but they have, other benefits like flexibility and health insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Like, although we're a pretty young organization, we're really trying our best to make sure that our staff members feel appreciated for the work that they do, and they do a lot of work. And my personal opinion is, I think people who are working in this kind of space and trying to solve really important issues and challenges within certain sectors, like I think that they need to be paid really, as well as possible within the constraints that exist. So that's kind of been what I've been, trying to do within TFA. Obviously, it's hard. Fundraising is hard. Right now, it's going to be even harder with the situation in the economy. But we're trying to do our best to hopefully create that environment within Teach For Armenia. And one of our goals is to make Teach For Armenia the best place to work for people. Again, through trial and error, but I think we're definitely on our way.
Thank you, Larisa John. I would like just to add here that, especially with regards to the funding, financial aid of our teacher leaders, we're always open for a collaborative effort, and the recent collaborative frameworks that we have with Armat Laboratories or the Startup Armenia are a great example of it, when in frames of the community development project that our teacher leaders are doing, so they can choose to apply in a joint program with TFA and them, and do the project together with them, and of course get an additional financial resource. As to the teaching part, I think it's also important that yes, 50 or even more % of our teacher leaders are joining the program without the teaching degree. Mm-hmm. But all of them, they are receiving a very thorough educational program from our team, and also those who don't have, they are getting an opportunity for a master's degree or remote master's degree during the 2 years. So they learn also what is the official program of our institutions are providing with regards to teaching degree, and they do this during the 2 years period. So they have like multiple opportunities to fill the gap in the teaching. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have another question from Vartan, and let me cite him here. Great to see Teach For Armenia's progress since it was launched. I still remember your first presentation to our community at Tufenkian Foundation. Now the question. Scale up is the issue that many very important social impact investment initiatives face with. What would be your tip there? How to scale up in the Armenian world?
I think honestly, well, in the Armenian world, it's difficult because we're, especially in the nonprofit sector, we're pretty much kind of like going to the same people, asking for donations. And, in my experience, I've seen fatigue within the donor community a little bit. Also mistrust. How are you using these funds? How much of my dollar is actually going to what you're saying you're doing, etc. I think it's getting better in the transparency issue. I think more and more nonprofits are kind of like becoming more accountable toward their donors in this way, where, like, for example, with Teach For Armenia, ever since inception, we've done audits with big accounting firms, including Ernst & Young and Deloitte. And so I think that's just like something that we all as nonprofits in Armenia need to continue doing. And I think that's a big part of scale, is like, if you can ensure trust, if you can, really build the right infrastructure and for it and ensure that it's truly transparent. I think scaling up and bringing in more people to support your work is going to be just more possible to do. The other thing I'll say also on this topic is I deeply believe in the public-private partnership model. And so I think for us to scale up as nonprofits or organizations that are in the social impact sector, I think it's really imperative that we find ways to collaborate with the government. For a very long time, and there are objective and subjective reasons for this, most nonprofits, especially those that were built by diasporans, would choose to operate outside of the system. And there were many reasons for that, and we don't need to go into that today. And so I think these organizations have done really important work and continue to do really important work. I think their issue also is then being able to scale up solutions that they've created within their communities through their work, because their approach has always been separate to the system, has been, in parallel, essentially. Teach for Armenia, I think when we started, actually, like, most people didn't think that it would be possible, mostly because we were actually going to work with the government and we were going to place our teachers into the system, like into the public school. And moreover, from the very first year, we asked the ministry to create a solution for us where our teachers would get paid a school salary, a teacher salary, like an official salary from the state budget. This was, in a lot of different ways, kind of an unprecedented approach. And around me, people who have been working in the nonprofit sector or have done really great work in the social impact sphere would say, why do you need this headache? Just run an after-school program. Just pay your teachers yourself. You should have that control, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm glad I listened to a lot of advice, but that specific thing I didn't listen to, because I knew if Teach for Armenia was to help enable systemic reform in the sector, then we need to work within the system. And so getting our teachers placed as public school teachers was like our first step to ultimately, in the long term, scaling up. And so that's why financially, we started with 14 teachers. And I think overall between the 14 teachers, like from the government or from the schools, we got but our teachers made like $5,000 or $6,000 cumulative between all of them. So that was super tiny. And I remember like someone even asked me, like, why go through the headache for just that sum of money? It wasn't the money that was important, that we were getting it or that our teachers were getting. It was like the concept of nonprofit working within the public sector. Now, as we've scaled and we have over 120 teachers working in 100 schools, they are now receiving they continue to receive salaries from schools, and the need for us to then provide larger and larger financial assistance has decreased, which has enabled us to either raise less money or kind of gear the funding that we do have towards creating an incubator, launching a new community impact fund, other things that nonprofits are better positioned to do, and enable the system and the government to actually do what they're meant to do, which is pay salaries and benefits and etc. So I think that's probably, in terms of sustainability, that's probably like that would be like my big answer to that, is like nonprofits need to test run, pilot, experiment, and accelerate learning, and then feedback that back to the government for consideration. And then if it works, it works. If the assessments show that it's a impactful strategy or an impactful program, then my hope is that that could then be nationalized or scaled or implemented in other areas, but not through the nonprofit this time, rather through the government. So I really believe in that model, and I hope that that's where we're going in our thinking in right now.
Thank you, Larisa John. So I would like probably to summarize our conversation, and maybe you can just briefly note about our plans or our vision that we have for the coming years, however you would like to finish this conversation, and then I will briefly talk about the program for this period.
So I guess I'll say that right now, one of the biggest, so in response to the COVID-19 situation, Teach For Armenia has launched a new call to action. It's called COVID-19 and the Digital Divide. We earlier talked about the digital divide and the inequity that the situation has created within our communities. I really encourage all of you to look into this. It's on our website. It's on our Facebook. It's essentially a strategy within Teach For Armenia that covers kind of two things. One is as I said earlier, the creation of a robust online learning program for our kids, and then paired with that, the necessary capital in terms of devices and internet connectivity that we need to provide to our students. Our goal is, we have a fundraising campaign right now that Gor, maybe you can link people to, but it's digitaldivide.fundraise.org. We're kind of doing this effort in waves. First wave is by June, we need to raise enough capital to enable 1,000 students with devices and internet connectivity so that we can run a remedial summer student leadership camp over the summer for our students. And these will be students who have been kind of totally left outside of learning since early March. And then gradually, our hope is to raise enough capital to enable another 14,000 of our students to participate in this online learning program that we're developing for this coming academic year. It's a really it's a really ambitious plan. I believe that we can be successful if we all come together. But it's absolutely vital. More and more, like, we're seeing that devices and technology and online access, it feels like it's been regarded as an extravagance. If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's pretty evident right now that internet connectivity and devices are kind of like at the bottom of the triangle where the basic human needs are. So I think that that's kind of like how we're thinking in the digital divide, really within the strategy within Teach For Armenia really highlights this as a necessity and something that we all need to be thinking about. I'd like to note here that we're developing this in alignment with the Ministry of Education's own response to the situation, and that's also been great. So I'll say, I guess I'll stop there. If you're interested in learning more about the digital divide and how we're thinking about things and what our strategic priorities are within this campaign, which is, again, not just a capital fundraising campaign to raise funding for devices and connectivity, but also enables our team to develop the necessary online learning program and tools that need to be paired up with those devices, then please go on our website or reach out to Gor or myself, and we'll tell you more.
So I've added the link to the campaign in the comment section. And since we have one more question about the mentorship part, if you would allow, I would answer that as a summary of our program. We had a question about providing a mentorship program, especially to the people, to the participants of our program who don't have an educational background. We have that program, and it's actually one of the crucial benefits that our teacher leaders are getting. They are having a personal mentor attached to them who is following their own development, both personal and professional, as well as the development of the classroom they are teaching in, and constantly and regularly providing support to the teacher leaders. And that support can include like different layers, starting from academic, finishing with moral support, communication support, etc. They do not stay in the community, but they are close. So we know we have regional offices. So besides the head office in Yerevan, we have an office in Vanadzor, and we have an office also in Artsakh, in Stepanakert, and mentors who are operating from there easily access the communities and regularly have visited and support our teacher leaders. Of course, in addition to the digital communication, to the regular online communication that they are having. So as we already mentioned, this is the period when we are finishing our recruitment season, and just in a couple of days, on April 30, we are going to close another round of applications, and this time we will be finishing the sixth generation of our teacher leaders who will move to a new community, who will be teaching in schools, doing extracurricular activities, doing community development projects. And at the same time, they will have a lot of content, a lot of trainings on their personal and professional development. They will get a mentorship. They will get a financial aid from Teach For Armenia in addition to their salary, and so on and so forth. So wherever you are, no matter you're in Armenia or abroad, and if you feel that this is the time for you to move to a new place and to start doing this, this is the great time to do. Your skills and education is certainly needed. And to do that, you just need to apply by going to teachforarmenia.org and in the right top corner, clicking apply button. And I want to finish on a fun note, Larisa, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So a lot of people during this COVID-19 quarantine period have some new habits or hobbies that they are posting. So a lot of people are cooking, doing some flash mobs at home. So what new habits do you have in this period?
New habits. I guess I meditate, which I've been doing always, but I would say I've picked up yoga. So I do at-home yoga. Some of our other staff members are doing at-home yoga now too. There's a great YouTube channel named Yoga with Adrian. For those of you who are interested, you can check her out. But yeah, so I would say yoga, stretching, that kind of thing. What about
and not
you?
The cooking.
No, I don't know. I wish it was so. I'm trying to stay. I mean, if I was to cook, I would probably bake, but I'm really worried about the consequences of baking on other aspects of me. So just trying to stay off of that as much as I can. What about you? I feel like you've been cooking a lot.
Yeah, I think the cooking is the second major part that takes my day. It's like returning to my hobby that I had. So it's good. So there are positive things in this quarantine too. We're still more at home, spending time with family, and of course, eating at home.
Definitely.
Thank you, Larisa. Thanks everyone who have been with us during this slightly more than 1 hour. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We certainly enjoyed. And in case you still have questions about Teach For Armenia, about how we respond to this new reality, or some questions to Larisa, you can certainly text to the Teach For Armenia's page or Larisa's official page. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
and
everyone.
Stay safe.
Stay safe. Stay at home.